All right, this this one's going to be interesting. I got to be careful what I say in the first minute. Um, but someone made a comment recently asking me to do a video about this subject. Yeah, I gotta wait like a minute. YouTube is it's a blessing, but it's also annoying. You got to play by all these stupid rules. Although I got to say, they pretty much leave me alone as long as I don't do anything too stupid on here. But um, I see a lot of other creators where they think they got to like speak in code. They think all these words are going to trigger the algorithm to go against them, and I don't think that's how it works. It's more they they make themselves a target by just saying a lot of stupid things over and over. But so yeah, we got one. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna do a video about the hopelessness of drug addiction. Someone made a comment saying, asking me to make another video about how to get off of opiates because it gives them hope. And so, here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize that have never been addicted to like hard drugs is it is like it seems like a very hopeless situation. And I mean, it's hard because with something like heroin, you you can't even really go a couple of hours without it. Forget about thinking about the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Um, but the problem is, and then eventually everyone gets to a point where they have to kick it. They either can't get it or they're just so disgusted with the lifestyle. Either way, everyone who's been on opiates has kicked it at some point. And then the problem with that is your tolerance goes down so low that now you can afford to get super high for super cheap. So it becomes, 10 times more appealing than it was when you got off it because all of a sudden, like in my case, I would always end up kicking it once I would get to 4 or 5 bags a day because I could not afford 40 or 50 bucks a day. And it would get to the point where you're spending 40 or 50 bucks a day and you're not even getting high. You're just feeling normal. And then it gets to the point where you don't even feel normal off of that. So you have no choice but to kick it at that point because it ain't really doing nothing to you anyway. Um, so, I understand why it's hopeless to a lot of people, but what you got to realize is that the situation you're in right now, you're under a spell. It's not reality. You know what I mean? The shit basically puts a spell on you and changes your thinking to the point where you think you can't live without it, but you lived your whole life without it up until that point. You know what I mean? So my experience with it is, you know, after a while, you get to the point where you start feeling the way you felt before you ever messed with it at all. And I didn't realize that was going to happen until it just kind of happened. No one ever, I never heard anyone even mention that part. But I got to a point eventually where I couldn't even believe I was thinking that way to where I wouldn't be able to live without the shit because now, and I haven't touched any type of opiates since I think it was Easter Sunday, maybe 2019. I think was the last time I did any suboxone. Um, and I'm so far past it at this point that it's shocking to me that I was ever even like addicted to the shit. So, um, I think the problem a lot of people have, and I'm not talking about just heroin, I'm talking about any drugs, is they just don't stay off it long enough to really get over it. They start to miss it and they go back to it thinking maybe, oh, I can just do it once or twice or whatever. But from my experience, and I've been through this 1,000 times, I would think, even up until probably 2018, I would still you got to realize I knew a lot of people on the street in New York who were on heroin, so I was constantly around people, and other times people would pop up that I hadn't seen in a while, and they would offer me like a free bag of dope. And I was on Suboxone, but when you still have that mentality where you kind of miss dope, it's hard to pass up a free bag of dope. Not to mention I had money at the time, so it was just like so I more than once I would take that free bag. It wouldn't do anything because it would be blocked by the sub, and I would be disappointed in myself for taking it. And then I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. My real final test with that shit was this. It must have been probably it must have been like the summer of 2019, or no, the summer of 2018. 2018 was a hard winter, and once the spring and the summer hit in 2018, I was making a lot of money again. I felt like $1 million. I felt like because that winter, that previous winter, 2017 going into 2018, I think it was such a brutal winter. The weather in New York was so bad that I just couldn't believe it. And more than once during that winter, I was thinking to myself, how am I going to make it? You know what I mean? And once I finally made it through that winter, you know, I just felt really, really good. Like I had just survived some really difficult shit. That winter, from the beginning of December till about mid-January, the weather didn't go above like freezing the whole time. And when you're doing portraits out in the park, you're not going to get many portraits off when it's 20 degrees every day, 10 degrees. I would go out and work sometimes when it was like 20, 25 degrees, just on the off chance that someone might get a portrait, but they usually wouldn't. But when it was like 10 degrees out, I couldn't even sit out there all day. It was pointless. I wasn't going to make any money. I would just suffer and freeze all day. Um, and it's strange the way things work out. I'm telling you, you don't know until you start really taking some big risks in life. But I can tell you one thing: things work in ways that defy logic. So basically, this is what happened that winter. I was down to a $2 bill, which I was hanging on to because they're rare. That was the extent of my money, and I didn't want to spend it because who the fuck wants to be sitting there at zero? Anyways, I'm out there doing my portraits. I got my $2 bill. That's my entire net worth is a $2 bill. And this this was right when the weather was warming up enough to where I could work. Um, and I ended up making maybe 50, $60 that day, but it was like uh, completely unexpected. You never know how shit's gonna work out. There's other forces at work. I don't know how to explain it, but right when I was down to my very last bit of money, and you got to realize that this is an experience that I was completely and totally sick of. This was, throughout all my years of being homeless, being down to $0 again, I was sick of it. I was disgusted with it. I was going to keep that $2 in my pocket. I didn't care. I wasn't spending it. I wasn't letting myself go to zero again. It was unacceptable to me. I would have sat there and starved. I was not spending that $2 bill. And then that day, I'm down to my last $2, and I end up making relatively a lot of money that day. $60 is a lot when you got $2 in your name, and it just went up from there. So that spring and summer, when I was making money again, I was in a real great mood. I felt like a millionaire having like $1,000 in my pocket. Um, and so I'm sitting out there, and it must be the middle of the summer, and one of the people I knew who sold heroin had just appeared out of nowhere. I hadn't seen him in a long time, hadn't seen him in years. You know who it was? If you watch my Legend of Ilya videos, it was oh, Sean was his name. Sean was the one who ran up and beat the brakes off of Casey because he felt that Casey was responsible for Ilya's death. Which, if you want to know the full story, watch my the Legend of Ilya videos. But Sean was the one who Once he heard what had happened and he felt it was Casey's fault, he seen Casey and just ran up on him and beat his ass. Anyways, so I hadn't seen Sean in years, and I'm sitting out there doing my portraits, and here comes Sean. And it was good to see him. I hadn't seen him in a long time. I didn't know what happened to him. Once I got to talking to him, apparently he was on Rikers Island. He got caught stealing. Um, Sean was one of those people where sometimes he would have 3 grand in his pocket, sometimes he would have zero, and he'd be stealing from the stores. You know what I mean? So he ended up in Rikers Island. He was on some sort of stealing spree. They finally caught him, and it was like this huge deal around Union Square. Apparently, there was like he was trying to outrun them in the street. He got tackled, and it was like this big scene apparently. But anyways, he had been sitting on Rikers Island ever since. So then he came out to the park that day, and he's sitting across from me, and he's trying to get his feet back up under him. He's selling heroin again, and I, you know, he was. We were talking, but he wasn't sure what my situation was. I was off heroin and on suboxone at the time, but I knew all I had to do was ask him for a bag or two, and he would have gave it to me. But here's the other thing: Sean was also fresh out on the street, and he was looking to, you know, he was looking for some, not help, but like an alliance. It's hard to explain unless you've been out on the street. Now, most people out on the street, they look for friends, they look for alliances. I was kind of the opposite of that. I stayed solo. I mean, I had friends and stuff, but I didn't want a, I work better alone. And so that was one of the things that was holding me back from taking any bags from Sean. I didn't want Sean hanging out with me all day, every day. Basically, I love Sean. He's a friend of mine and everything, but I like to be alone. I like to do my own thing. And the other thing is, I don't want heroin around me all day, every day, so I didn't take it. But really, in my opinion, that was like God, the universe, the force, whatever, throwing me one last test to see if I'm going to take the free dope. And I didn't take it. I didn't bring it up. I was polite to Sean, and everything, but I wasn't. I wasn't open to hanging out with him every day. I didn't say that. I just energy. You know what I mean? Like I was sending that energy out. Like it's good to see you and all, but that world for me, the world that you're still in, is the past. I'm not in it. Good to see you, but I don't want none. I don't want it around me. And good luck out there. You know what I mean? That was basically the energy I was sending out. Um, and so that was that was the final test for like here's my theory on it. If you're on whatever you're on, you're in order for you to move forward in life, you got to get off it. And until you are off it, you're just going to be stuck in this loop. So I wanted to be out of that loop, the homelessness, the drug addiction, the this, the that. I wanted to move forward in life, to get a YouTube going, get back to doing stand up, pretty much where I am now. This is where I was trying to get to. Now, I can tell you with 99% certainty, none of this would have happened if I had stayed on dope. What would have happened was I'd still be homeless in New York City. I'd still be making money in the spring, summer, and fall, and being dead broke all winter, going down to zero every winter, maybe down to a buck or two. I'd be in that same loop, and I wanted that loop to end. I wanted out of that loop. So the universe threw me one final test. Had I had failed that test, I believe it would have set me back at least a year. The universe, God, whatever you want to call it, was trying to make sure that I was letting go of that shit and that I was going to move forward. And that's how I feel about it. So also, there was this subconscious thought in my head the whole time I was on heroin. If you want this loop of bullshit to end, this loop of hopelessness, you want to move forward with it, things you want to do in your life, with the YouTube and the stand up and doing doing things you want to do instead of doing things you have to do. you're going to have to let go of the dope. And that was in the back of my mind the whole time. I would try to deny it. I would try to ignore it. I would try to argue with it in my head, but the truth is the truth. And eventually I had to just accept it and let go of the dope. So if you're in that position, you're feeling the hopelessness and you don't know how you're going to move forward in life, I can tell you one thing. You're going to have to let that shit go. It ain't going to be easy, but here's the other thing. It ain't going to be that hard either because I did it. I know other people who have done it. I know other people who have not done it. But if I can do it, you can do it. And I've done harder things in life. I can tell. I'll give you an example of something that I did that was harder than kicking dope. The first time I did stand-up comedy, I am a shy person. I was scared out of my wits to do stand-up comedy. I forced myself up there. I go up there and I bomb. And it was as bad as I thought it would be. It was just as bad as I imagined it would be if I bombed. I bombed. I ate shit. I left that place in like a daze, as if I had just been hit by a car. I didn't even, I couldn't even think straight. I was like, holy shit, that I can't do that again. I can never put myself through that again. And then the next day, I was thinking to myself, you know what? What are you going to do? You're going to go back to the life that is making you miserable with, and you're just going to grind out the rest of your life in fear of poverty and this and that. I was thinking to myself, I can't just give up that easy. Like, that was my hope. That was my escape. And I couldn't just quit that easy. So I said, nah, fuck that. I'm going up next week. That was a hard decision because I wasn't good at stand-up comedy the first time I did it. I wasn't even close to being good. I ate shit. It was a crowd that was like not a hard crowd. And I still ate shit. And so going back up that next week was probably the hardest thing I ever did. On my way down there, I was like sick to my stomach. I was so fucking nervous. But I went up and somehow I did all right. And after that, my whole life changed. I started believing in myself a lot more and shit. That was the hardest thing I ever did. Now, as far as kicking dope, I used the suboxone. And using the suboxone makes it a lot easier. But I can tell you this much. My advice is don't go through the don't go through the opiate clinics and all that because what they're going to do is they're going to put you on a massive amount of subs. It's all about money for them. So my advice is get some subs off the street. They're giving so many of these things out that there's plenty of people out there selling them. You can go to the clinic and find people who are going to sell them. Get them off the street. Do kick your dope. Wait until you are in withdrawal. I've made this mistake before too, where I took the sub before the withdrawals really kicked in. I put myself into precipitated withdrawal, which is even worse than regular withdrawal. It's like precipitated withdrawal. What happens is the suboxone knocks all the opiates off the receptors, and I'm not sure exactly how the science works, but I can tell you how it feels. It feels like you go from feeling a little shitty to peak withdrawal, kicking dope in like 5 minutes, and then it goes on for a couple of hours, and it's intense and it's bad, and your stomach is messed up, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like you just gotta wait it out. And I had to, the day I was in precipitated withdrawal, I had to go make money that day. I had to go work and I had to go do portraits, but I couldn't, I had no money. I had to go make money to eat and hopefully make enough to buy some weed too, which was going to help me stay off the dope. So I sat there in the tub in my apartment in the Bronx, just useless for about 2 or 3 hours, and then dragged myself up out of there, dragged myself onto the train, got down to Central Park. Thank God I got a couple portraits off, got my food, got my weed, went back to the Bronx, and just chilled and took it easy. But from that moment on, I was on Suboxone and not heroin. And so, you know, don't put yourself in precipitated withdrawal. I was not, I would, it took me days to start feeling somewhat normal again. I'll put it to you that way. Like the next day, I felt a lot better, but I didn't feel like normal yet. But so my advice is get the subs off the street, and nobody can tell you, you know yourself. So my advice is take the minimum amount of sub that's going to keep the withdrawals at bay, and um, stay on the subs for as long as it takes for you to not care about heroin anymore. It took me about a year. About a year after I started with the subs, I didn't care about heroin anymore. And that was, I didn't expect that to happen either. I thought I'd be missing heroin for the rest of my life. But about, I would say, almost exactly 1 year after I had done just suboxone and no heroin, about a year later, I simply didn't give a shit about heroin at all. I didn't care about it no more. I was done. I didn't miss it. Um, I felt fine. I felt normal. I was smoking weed at night the whole time. I'm the type, when I smoke weed, I don't smoke weed all day. I don't want to be like, weed turns me into a zombie. If you want to see me stoned, watch my other channel where I play Red Dead Redemption 2 stoned. I'm like a zombie. Um so when I smoke weed, right now I'm smoking weed. I wait till the end of the day. I don't if I smoke weed first thing when I wake up, I'm gonna be useless all day. I'm just gonna be lazy. I'm not gonna get shit done. So I wait till the end of the day. I've done everything I gotta do, and I'm sitting there chilling. I'll light up a bowl, smoke it, and then I play Red Dead Redemption 2. I film it and I put it on my other channel. Unless I'm going to do stand up that night or whatever else, then I don't. I just don't smoke. Um, but so for a year on the subs, and I was smoking weed at night because when I was on the street in New York, I was doing portraits every day. I don't even want to smoke. So what I would do when I was homeless in New York, I would wake up in the morning, pack up my camp, head to McDonald's, get me a cup of coffee, sit there and drink it, bullshit on my phone. Then I would head to Central Park. I would work till about, depending on how much money I had to make, I would work till either maybe 2 o'clock at the earliest. I would get out there around 10 a.m. I like it. I would work till either 2 o'clock, or sometimes I would work till the sun went down, depending on how much money I wanted to make and shit like that. But after I would work, I would go to my, I have my own little hidden spot in Central Park where I would sit there and smoke a bowl. Then I would go get something to eat. Then I would go charge my phone at Starbucks. And then that would be my day pretty much. So that was what I did for about a year straight. And then out of nowhere one day, I've told this story before, walking down 71st Street. I had just finished my coffee at McDonald's. I'm walking down 70 West 71st Street on my way to Central Park to do my portraits, and it hits me like a bolt of lightning out of the sky. Like, you don't care about heroin anymore. And I was like, I didn't even realize it until right then. Like, I do not care one iota about heroin anymore. I'm past it. I'm over it. I'm done with it. That that phase of my life is over. I knew it beyond any shadow of a doubt. Up until then, I was planning on just staying on the subs till I didn't know. I didn't put much thought into it. I was just doing the subs. I was at that point, I would say I was doing about a half a sub a day, which is 4 milligrams. I was doing 2 milligrams in the morning, and what I was doing was grinding it up and snorting it. I was just, I was used to that when I did heroin. I was snorting it. When I was doing the subs, I was snorting them. And so that's what I would do. I would I'd get to McDonald's for my coffee. I'd go in the bathroom and I would snort my 2 milligrams of sub. Then I would get my coffee. Everything's fine. Everything's normal. Go work all day before I went to bed at night. Snort another 2 grams. And I did it for a year and wasn't thinking a whole lot of it. It was just normal. It was my routine. Um, and then, like I said, walking down 71st Street that day, I realized I'm over the heroin, so I may as well get off the subs. What's the point in having this drug in my system if I don't need it anymore? I don't. But here's the major thing to know, to learn from this part of the story is, instead of kicking the shit cold turkey and missing heroin and fighting yourself to not do it, you may as well get on the subs. The subs are going to block it. You can't do heroin on suboxone. Like I said, I did it a few times. It's a waste of money. After wasting my money a bunch of times, I stopped doing that. I stopped caring about it. I stopped even thinking about it. People would be like, yo, I'm going to get a bundle. You want a bag? I'd be like, nah. Yeah, I do want a bag, but it's just going to get blocked. And I'm not waiting 2 days for the subs to get out of my system. And fuck it, I'm not dealing with it. I'm on the subs. I don't care. And so after about a year of that attitude, out of nowhere, I realized I don't need heroin no more. So my point here is that the subs work. I never even tried methadone. I know people who have been on methadone for 30 years, and I've heard too many nightmare horror stories about methadone. Everyone was telling me like the only thing methadone did was get them addicted to heroin and methadone. They were doing both. I've had people say in my comments that the methadone worked for them. Look, if it works for you, then that's do that. But I can tell you from experience, the subs worked like a charm for me. They blocked the dope. I couldn't do no dope. I had to let it go. I was Because of the subs, I was forced to let it go. And so after about a year of that and just living a normal life, you just get over it. And so it took me about a year. It may take you 6 weeks. Who knows? Everyone's different. And so that day, once I realized I'm done with the heroin, I started weaning down on the suboxone, cutting it down a little bit at a time. Pretty much every couple of days, I would shrink my dose. And um, so when you shrink it down like that, here's the thing with Suboxone, it stays in your system for a long time. So you can shrink it down a little tiny bit. You're not going to feel it for days. And by then, I'll put it to you this way. I was shrinking my dose down regularly, every few days or so, maybe once a week at the longest. I would shrink it down minuscule amounts. I mean, like I'd shave a crumb off it, just a little bit at a time. I chipped away at it, little teeny tiny bit at a time, like such small amounts that I rarely felt a difference. And if I did feel a difference, I would do another little crumb of sub. Um, but I didn't feel shit really. It was easy. Everyone's like, "Oh, when you kick the subs, it's going to be worse than kicking dope." This is what people were telling me, and I'm telling you from experience, it was nothing like that. I felt fine weaning it down, completely fine. Um, every once in a while, I think I would have some sort of mental thing where I was like, oh, I feel bad today. I'm going to do another little piece of sub. I think that was just me feeling shitty that day for whatever reason. And, like that placebo effect type thing. I don't think it even really made a difference because the little teeny crumb of sub I would do in between my doses, I don't think it made a difference. And in a year's time, I only did that maybe 3, 4 times where I was like, I feel extra shitty today. I'm doing a piece of sub. I don't care. And after about a year of weaning it down every couple of days, I was down to, I mean, a piece of Suboxone so small you couldn't even measure it. It probably weighed nothing. I was doing that little crumb in the morning and that little crumb at night. And I got to the point where I couldn't even make it any smaller, really. I mean, it was a crumb. And so then I kicked it. Now, another major hurdle in there was probably about halfway through it, I came to the realization that there's no point in snorting these subs anymore. It's not getting you high anyway. All you're doing is messing your nose up. Let go of that. Start putting it under your tongue like a normal person. And that was a hard decision to make because I was thinking to myself, like, what if what if it doesn't have the same impact? This and that. I need to work today. I got to make money. I can't be out there feeling dope sick. But I was like, I'm tired of fucking my nose up. I want to be able to smell like a normal person. I don't want my nose all clogged up, full of chemicals anymore. And so I started just putting the sub under my tongue like a normal person, and that was the end of that. I was like, it made absolutely no difference. I felt 100% the same as when I was snorting into my nose. The only difference is now my nose worked better. So, if you're snorting them, I can tell you from experience, it doesn't make a difference whether you snort it or put it under your tongue. It has the same exact effect. The only difference is you're fucking your nose up with that shit. It's not meant to be in your nose. So that was another, but it was a hard thing for me to let go of because you got to realize at that point in my life for the past 5 or 6 years, the only thing that was making me feel good or normal was snorting drugs into my fucking nose. So it was actually kind of a hard thing to let go of. But once, I'm telling you, that first time where I was like, I'm putting it under my tongue. I don't care if it makes me feel a little worse. This is what I'm doing. I'm tired of having this shit in my nose. I forced myself. Within 3, 4 hours of that decision, I was like, Jesus Christ, I should have done that a year ago because it made absolutely no difference in the impact of the sub. So, but yeah, so this video is for the people who are trying to kick dope. You know what I mean? So I'm telling you, it's so doable if you do it the way I did it. Not only are you going to get it done, you're going to get it done in a relatively painless way. It's like this. I just couldn't believe really how uh, I, I had a I gotta say I had a pretty easy time weaning it down. Every couple of days, I'd shave a little crumb off, I'd little tiny, teeny tiny crumb, and the next thing I knew, about a year went by, and I was down to such a small amount. I'm like, how can this even be doing anything? You know? So I was like, I may as well stop. It was Easter Sunday, 2019. I was like, I was thinking about it for a month or two, like, man, you're down to a crumb. You may as well stop. But just the way the dates had fallen in line, Easter was coming up soon. And I was like, well, you know what? Spring, equinox, resurrection, renewal. Easter Sunday is going to be my first day of not doing nothing. And next thing you know, it's Easter Sunday. I'm sitting there in McDonald's drinking my coffee, and I don't want to face this today. I want to just do my little piece of sub and do my normal thing and go make money. And I didn't want to deal with it, but I forced myself to. I said, you know, if you don't do it today, you may never do it. And so that Easter Sunday, I didn't do it. I just forced myself not to do it. It was a hard decision. I was wrestling myself the whole morning, drinking my coffee. I'm like, man, deal with this shit tomorrow. Just go do your sub. But I insisted, and I didn't do it. I get out there, I start doing my portraits. I didn't feel any effects. I felt complete, like as if I had taken the sub. I felt totally normal, felt totally fine. And then the nighttime comes. Once again, I don't take no piece of sub. And it was another little battle. I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll just do it once a night now. But I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Dude, you're done with this shit. Don't do it. I still had some sub in my backpack, little backup supply just in case. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm not doing it. I go to sleep that night, no trouble sleeping. Everything's fine. I wake up the next day. Everything's fine. I feel totally normal. Um, and I'm thinking I'm over it. Maybe a day or two later, I'd say I think it was Easter Sunday. I did not take this up. I do believe it was that Wednesday where I'm thinking I'm over it. And I'm like, oh, I'm off the subs. But that was fucking easy. I feel totally fine. That Wednesday, I go to sleep that night and I wake up at 4 a.m. very abruptly, and I'm in a state of withdrawal, which shocked the shit out of me because this was, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It was 4 days without sub, and I was doing such a small amount, but it took about 4 days for it to completely flush out of my system, apparently. And so I woke up that night, 4 a.m., in a state of withdrawal, and uh, it was not pleasant. I had, if you ever kick dope, you get that feeling where you can't sit still. It was that, but not as intense. But it was there. It was enough to where I couldn't I couldn't deal with it. For everyone's telling me, oh, sub withdrawal lasts for a month. So if it was going to do this for a month, that was going to be a problem. But so I was like, you know, it's 4 a.m. I can't sleep now because I'm in a state of withdrawal. I take a little teeny tiny little bit of suboxone dust out of my stash, and I mean, maybe a tenth of a gram, and I put that under my tongue. I'm thinking, if I got to do more, I'll do more, but I'm going to start small. I take that little hundredth of a gram, probably, and I'm being literal here. Yeah, a teeny tiny amount of suboxone dust. I put it under my tongue. Works like a charm. I It pushed away that feeling of the restless leg thing that happens when you're kicking dope, which is one of the worst aspects of it. It it chased that away. I went to sleep. I woke up the next day. I didn't feel 100% great, but I also didn't have that thing where I couldn't sit still. It wasn't like this torturous thing. I just felt a little off. I felt a little weak, but I also had a little bit of a stash of sub hidden away and thinking to myself, if it gets bad, I'll take another little scoop of the sub dust, put it under my tongue, and, whatever. So every day I considered doing that because I did not feel 100%. I still worked every day. I still did my portraits. I still smoked my weed after my portraits. I still worked out. Another part of my routine is after I worked, I did my portraits. I'd go to my little spot in Central Park. I'd do a set of push-ups, and then I would get stoned. And I maintained that very same routine while I was in this slight state of withdrawal. And at the time, I was thinking this is probably going to last a month. This is what everyone's telling me. And so it was not easy to do push-ups in that state, but I forced myself to. And I believe that helped me get through the whole thing. And then at night, when I would get to my spot at night, I would do another little workout. I'm not going to go through my whole routine, but I was doing my regular workouts the whole time, even though I was in this like slight state of withdrawal, which is not as bad as heroin withdrawal. Suboxone withdrawal is not as bad because, first of all, I weaned it down to almost nothing. So my body was not used to having a lot of suboxone running through it. It was used to having a teeny tiny amount of suboxone running through it. Um, so I felt somewhat shitty for about a week, but still forced myself to work out at night after I would, I would, I was spending a lot of money on food. I was treating myself to all the best weed and all the best food that I could have access to. I was trying to make life easy on myself. And after about a week of that, I started feeling better. And then as each week went by, I felt better and better and better. And after about a month, I felt better than I had in years. I felt like $1 million. And I was proud of myself. I was happy with myself. I I felt just as good as I ever did before I ever did dope. So if you're trying to get off that shit, follow my instructions and you will get off it. And it should be just about as easy as it was for me. Am I saying it was easy? No, I'm not saying it was easy, but I can tell you one thing. It was nowhere near as hard as everyone was making it seem. And here's the other thing. Once you get through the other side of that, you feel like you just won the fucking Super Bowl or something. You feel like you got your whole life ahead of you and you feel hope again. And so I'm telling you, whatever you want to do in life, you're going to have to kiss that bullshit goodbye, let that shit go. It ain't doing you no good. It's got a spell on you. It's got you thinking that it's a lot better than it is. I don't miss the shit. I don't care about the shit. Here's another funny thing about heroin. Now, this video is getting long, but the first time I did heroin, I didn't even care. I didn't even really like it. And now that I'm way past it, I think of that high, and I don't miss it. I don't like it. I don't want to be sitting there like a fucking zombie. I mean, it's, I'm telling you, it's got a spell on you. And once you break that spell, like I said, it took me about a year on the suboxone, and then the spell was broken. Once that spell was broken, it's nothing. Um, so you just got to experience it. You think it's impossible, you think it's hopeless. It's neither of those things. It's actually very doable. It's not, you know, it's nowhere near as hard as everyone makes it seem. So just follow those instructions, and you'll get it done. And and then you'll be free of that shit. So I guess that's the end of this one. I appreciate every single one of y'all. If you want to see me doing stand up, my last video is me doing a set in Palm Harbor, and it's that's just me fucking around. That's not even I film every set, and so it's like I'm not out there like I'm gonna go film the set and do my best. That wasn't even. I need to put up a set of me really trying to murder a crowd. The next stand-up video I put up, I'll do that. Here's the thing: I do stand up at that place every week, and there's people who come there every week to watch us do stand-up. So I don't just do my best material every week. I bring new shit every week. Even you know what I mean? I'm trying to entertain the fucking crowds. I'm not up there to just memorize my set. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to keep it to the people who come there every week still are entertained by what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So I'm not up there just doing my best five every week. I'm up there doing new shit every week. But anyways, appreciate every single one of y'all. If you want to see me playing, if you want to see my Red Dead Redemption 2 playthrough, that's on the other channel. I'll link my Patreon in the description. What I'm doing on Patreon is very different than what I'm doing on YouTube. But anyways, appreciate every single one of y'all. Thanks for the subs, likes, tips. Thanks for the Patreons. Thanks for the love on my other channel. And I'll link all that in the description. And that's the end of this one. Everyone have a good one. I'll see you on the next one.